Hello everybody, my name is Reza Dorani and today we are going to use PowerApps to upload multiple documents to a SharePoint Document Library and also tag the documents with specific metadata. So to start with, I have a document library in SharePoint called Contracts. I've created two custom columns. One is called Contract Date, which is of type date and time. The second column is called contract type. It is a choice column. It has three types: fixed price, time and materials, and CR. So these are my metadata related to my columns. Again, this is just a simple use case that I'm trying to demonstrate. So let's go to PowerApps and let's create a brand new app. I'm going to call this Contract Management. I'm going to use the tablet layout for this purpose. This is a Canvas app. Alright, so here's my app. I'm going to rename my landing screen to home screen. So we need to upload files to SharePoint. There is no control available that allows you to upload files. However, there is a control called add picture that allows you to upload picture files. So if I was to play this and if I was to add an image, as you can see, it just defaults to images. I can upload a picture. However, this same control can also upload files. If you look at the bottom, by default it relates to image files, but if I change this to all files, I can actually upload other file types as well. So the first thing is, as you can see, it says change picture, because everything with this control, it's a composite control. It has a couple of controls that are working together to give you the seamless experience of uploading pictures, but this also works with files. So for the first part of this demo, we're going to try and use this control to actually upload any type of file. The only caveat here is that users would have to know that whenever they click on add file or whatever text we put here, it will default to image files, and they would have to change this to all files in order to pick any other file type. But it works. So the first thing what we're going to do, if you look at this add media control, and if you look at the text, it says tap or click to add a picture. We're going to change this to add file, and then it says change picture. We're going to also call this add file. Okay, so it says add a file, and we can make this look like a nice little button. So we can fill this with a particular theme color, and we can give this particular text color, and then just increase the size, and this looks like a nice little button right here in my app where a user can actually go and add a file. Of course, if I add a picture, as you can see, there's an image control at the back end that's associating it with a picture. But in my case, I just want this to be generic for files, and I don't want this backend image control to show, although we will be using it. So what I will be doing right now is I'm just going to hide the image control associated with this. Okay, so the first step for me is to upload a simple file. And of course, every time the user adds these files, I want them to be stored in a gallery. I need a collection where I store all these files and I post all of this information into my contracts management document repository. Now, in order for me to do that, I need to add a gallery in PowerApps so that every time I add a file, I load it to a collection and show it in the gallery. Let's keep this a very simple gallery. I'm just going to make this title. That's it. So here's my gallery for my files. And every time the user adds a file, I just want the file to show up here so that the user knows that the file he's uploaded is available in the gallery. So the first step is every time the user hits add file, I need to add it to a collection. Now this control, the add file control, which has the media button within it, has a property called on select. So every time this control is selected, I want something to happen. I want to add to a collection, and this collection would be a collection of contracts, and I'm going to add a record to this collection. I'm going to create a property called title, which will store the property of the file name. This add media button control within this picture control in PowerApps actually has a property called file name, which will directly give me the name of the file. So that's going to be my title. And I'm going to create another property called data stream. this is going to hold the data stream for the associated file. And in order to get the data stream of this associated file, I'm going to use the image control, which is my uploaded image 1 is the name of my image control, dot image. The image property is going to hold the data stream associated with the file that I'm uploading, which could be of any type. Now, the gallery, currently the items is the custom gallery sample. I'm going to replace this with my collection of contracts that I just created whenever the user clicks on add file and uploads a file. So let's do this. I'm going to hit add file, and let's say I uploaded an image. Okay, let's see. Let's go to all files. Okay, so here's my file that got uploaded. I uploaded a contract document, uploaded a image, and let's say I go back to all files. I uploaded contract 1, contract 2. So the user is going to keep going on, and the user is going to keep uploading his files. So as you can see, every time I click on add file, the files are being uploaded out here. At the same time, if you look at the collection associated with my gallery, the data stream and the title of my files are being stored in this collection. Okay. Now, even though the non-picture type files, like in this case, I've used Excel, but let's also take an example of other file types. Obviously, I have to keep changing this. So let's say I upload a PDF document. All of these other file types, also their data streams are being stored in this collection. Okay. So I've created a mechanism right now through which users can come add files, and all these files are being stored in a collection. However, I want this data to be posted out to SharePoint. I want all of these documents to be uploaded here as contracts. Now, in order for me to do that, I'm going to add another button out here, and we are going to, let's change a few properties. Let's get the theme right. So here's my button. I'm going to call this for now post to contracts library. Okay. So I'm going to call this posts to contracts library. And when the user clicks on this button, I want this entire collection to be posted to my document library in SharePoint. Now, there is no direct way for me to do that in PowerApps. So what I would have to do is I have to use a Microsoft flow. So what I will do right now is I'm going to go click on action, click on the button, click on action, go to flows, and head on create a new flow. What this is going to do is it's going to create a brand new flow for me, and the trigger for this flow is PowerApps. Now, first thing, best practice is rename or name your flow correctly. So I'm going to call this contracts management flow. Okay, that's the name of my flow. And the first step, what I'm going to implement here is I'm going to create a variable first, and I'm going to initialize a variable in flow. I am going to rename this action. I'm going to call this contracts JSON. Okay, and I'm going to call this variable var contracts. Okay, so I have a variable of contracts. As you can see, I'm going to use, I don't have an option like JSON out there. I do have object, but in this case, I'm just going to pick string, and I'm going to say ask in PowerApps. And what this is going to do is whenever I call this flow from PowerApps, this is a value that the flow will expect PowerApps to pass. So it's expecting a string value coming through from PowerApps. The next thing what I'm going to do is I am going to use a compose statement and use an expression in flow called JSON, wherein I'm going to convert this variable that I just got from PowerApps, and I'm going to convert this into JSON. Okay, so now all I've done is I've converted this string variable that I'm getting from PowerApps, and I'm converting it into JSON in flow. Now, of course, if the value that I'm passing is not in a valid JSON format, this action is going to fail. Okay, so I've just gone ahead and I've created a JSON object right here. So I'm just going to save this for now, and we're going to stop here as far as flow is concerned. We're going to come back to this. I'm going to go back to my Power App, and now as you can see, my flow is listed right here. Okay, with the flow that I just created. So I'm going to close this. Okay, I'm going to come back to my Power App, and I'm going to click the flow, which is my contracts management flow. Now, the moment I do this, as you can see, It's calling the run function of my flow, and it is asking me for that value, which is of type string. Now, when I'm going to pass the value from PowerApps to flow, there's this new function. Obviously, I need to pass it in a JSON format. There's a new function available in PowerApps called JSON. So I'm going to use this new function. The data associated with this is going to be my collection, which is the same collection that's associated with the gallery. Also, this collection has binary data. I have a data stream, so I want to pass that entire data stream over. So it is very important for me to use JSON format dot include binary data. That's all I'm going to do for now. Okay, so I'm going to play this app and I'm going to click post to contracts library. And what this is going to do is this is actually going to go ahead and call my flow. Now, if I go to flow, so I'm going to go to flow.microsoft.com, go to my flows and go to the flow that I just created, which is contracts management flow. As you can see, this flow just got triggered. And within this flow, I got the data set from PowerApps. That's the string that I passed from PowerApps to flow. And I also converted that to a JSON object and the compose action. As you can see, this JSON object is in the form of an array, and it has data stream, which is the actual data stream of my files that I uploaded in PowerApps in my collection, and the title associated with my files. So great, I have an array right here, a JSON object within flow that has the title of my files, and it also has the data stream associated with it. Okay, and all this magic happened because in PowerApps, when I was passing this information over to flow, I actually used the JSON object to convert it into JSON format and include the binary data. Now, heading back to flow, the output of this JSON action, I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to add another action called Parse JSON. Okay, so here's a data operation called Parse JSON. The content of Parse JSON is going to be the output of my compose action. And the schema, I'm going to click on use sample payload to generate schema. I already copied the sample payload based on the output I got from compose. I'm just going to paste it in here and hit done. And as you can see, it has converted this into a schema object that would parse this content based on the sample payload that I uploaded. Now this is going to be an array of objects which have two properties, title and data stream. Now, because it's an array of files that is coming through from PowerApps to flow, and I want to post these files out to SharePoint, what I will first do is I will use the control action called apply to each. Why? Because the parse JSON is going to give me an array of objects. So I'm going to pick the output of parse JSON, so apply to each, the body attribute related to parse JSON, and I'm going to use the function create file. Okay, so I'm going to call create file. I'm going to go to SharePoint and use the create file action. Once I do this, it's asking me for the address of my site. My site is at the root, and I have a library called contracts. And now it's asking me for the name and the content of the file. The name of the file is right here. It's in the title property of the object that I'm passing from PowerApps to flow. So I'm going to use title. And for the file content, in order to actually post the data stream to SharePoint, I need to use an expression. As you can see, if I just use data stream, this points to items of apply to each data stream. This is related to expressions and flow. So I'm just going to close this. And I'm going to use an expression here in place of the file content. It's called data URI to binary. So I'm going to convert the data stream to binary and post it to SharePoint, and that will enable me to actually upload the file to SharePoint. And now I need to put the value in this. If I go to dynamic content, you see it doesn't show up. Flow is a little buggy. So in order for me to do this, I could use the expressions, and I'm going to use the same expressions, items of apply to each. And if you are confused as to how to get this, I have a trick here. So maybe I just add, let's go back here, let's click out, click in, let's go to data stream, let's do peak code, and you should see data stream right here, items apply to each data stream. Just copy this, go back, remove this, go to expression, and out here we can use data URI to binary and just paste the expression that we copied and hit OK. That's all we got to do. Now hit save. So once I'm done with this is going to actually go ahead and save the flow. Just give it a moment. There you go. The flow is saved. Now if I head back to my app and if I hit post to contracts library, this should again trigger my Microsoft flow. And if I look at my flow run, you see my flow is running. So let's go here. And this flow has succeeded. And as you can see, if I go to apply to each branch, it's running 4 times because the output action of my JSON has my 4 files that I posted from PowerApps to flow. And it will go ahead and create those files one by one in the contracts management document library. Now, if I head back to the document library, here you go. All those files that I uploaded from my Power App have actually been posted directly into my SharePoint document library. All of this by using just one flow and Power Apps and by using the magic of the new JSON function. Now I just don't want to upload files to the contracts library in SharePoint. I want to actually do more. I want to associate a contract date and a contract type. I want to associate metadata as well. Contract date is a simple date and time field. Contract type is a choice field. So what I will do next is I will go back to my Power Apps, and out here I will include 2 controls. One of them is going to be the date control, so the user can pick the date associated with the contract or all these contracts. Let's just make this, we'll use a scenario wherein I want to post multiple documents and tag them all exactly the same. We could do this individually as well. Within the gallery I could add those controls, but just to keep this simple for now, I'm going to add a date control. I'm going to add a label out here which is going to say contract date. Okay, so this is going to be the contract date, and I'm going to add another label right here, and I'm going to call this contract type. Now the contract type is going to be of type drop down, so I'm just going to place my drop down control right here, and the items property from this drop down, I want to fetch the values coming in from this choice field. So in order for me to do that, I would have to go back to my data sources and add a data source, use the SharePoint connection, and this should populate all my recent sites. I pick my site, I pick my library and hit connect. So this has now got an association with my contracts document library. And now if I go back to my drop down, I can use a property called, or a function called choices, and it's asking me for the column. So I'm going to say use the data source contracts, and the column name is contract type. So get me all the choices values from this column. And now if I play the app, as you can see, it has all my choices: fixed price, time as materials, or a CR. I've got all my contract types, which are exactly the same from my SharePoint document library. So great. I have an option for the user to pick a contract date. I have an option for the user to pick the contract type, which is associated with all these files that the user is uploading. Again, I can keep uploading files. I can go back to all files. I can upload another contract in here. Next step, what I want to do is I want to post all this information to Flow. So I'm already posting the collection information. Now additionally, I need 2 more pieces of information. I need the contract date and the contract type. Now in order for me to do that, I'll have to go back to my Flow. Now I could go to Microsoft Flow and make the change. However, I have observed that sometimes PowerApps does not pick those changes up. It's purely because of the caching issues related to PowerApps. So you may have to close your app and come back again. Another option is you can go back to the button which is calling the flow, go to your action tab, go to flows, and right here you have your contracts management, which is the flow associated with the button, and you can edit it right here. So if you click on edit, it will directly take you to that same flow, and you can make modifications to that flow. Now I added a variable for contracts JSON, which was holding the JSON object for all the documents that were being posted. Now I need 2 other pieces of metadata. So what I will do is I will go ahead and initialize 2 more variables in my flow. One of them I will call it as, I'm going to rename this. I'm going to call this as contract date. Okay, I'm going to call this var contract date. I'm going to again make this a string, and I'm going to ask for the value in PowerApps. As you can see, you have to hit see more to get this. I'm going to click on this, and now it's going to also ask for the contract date. Again, I'm going to add another option. Again, I'm going to initialize a variable, and I'm going to rename this to contract type. So it's going to be var contract type. And I'm going to make this a string, and again, I'm going to ask for this in PowerApps. So now when PowerApps is calling flow, it would not only have to pass the JSON, but also have to pass the date, which is a string value, and also a contract type, which is a string value, although in PowerApps, they're actually a date and a dropdown, which relates to the exact same dropdown in my backend data source. So now that I've done this, I have these values. I am creating my files on the fly, and this apply to each loop. So the next step, what I'm going to do is there is a action and flow called update file properties related to SharePoint. I'm going to call this action, and in this action, I need to again pick my SharePoint site. I need to pick my document library, it's contracts. Now it's asking me for the ID of the item. The previous step, which is create file, if you look at the dynamic content associated with that action, you will have the item ID because we just created the file. So I'm going to pick this. And now once I do this, it is asking me for pieces of information like the contract date and the contract type value. Now this is a date field. So what I'm going to do for the contract date, I'm already passing it as a date from PowerApps to SharePoint. So I'm going to directly use my variable, which is variable contract date. And for the contract type value, there's an option here called enter custom value. I'm going to pick this. And for my custom value, I'm going to pick the contract type variable that I created right here. So great, I have my contract date, I have my contract type, and I know which items I am uploading. Once I'm done with this, I'm going to hit save. And if all is well with my flow, this should go ahead and get saved. Okay, this gets saved. I'm going to close my flow. I'm going to leave this. Going back to my PowerApps. Now, as you can see, although I went back to PowerApps, it did not reflect those additional variable calls. So the first step, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, remove this association, okay? And again, associate the contracts management flow with this button. And now, as you can see, when I reassociate it, it fetches the new schema of my flow. And I'm going to copy, I had already copied the JSON schema, so I'm already passing that. And now additionally, what I need to do is I need to pass new attributes, right? It's asking me for the contract date value. I have a date picker control right here, so I'm going to parse the date picker control dot selected date. So this is going to pass the selected date from the contract date control right here. And then I also have a drop down, which is comprising of the contract types. That's the next attribute that I need to pass to my flow. So I'm going to do drop down dot selected dot value. That's it. That's all I have to do. I'm going to go back to my contracts library. Now, if I re-upload those files, if I upload the same files, SharePoint will override those files. So that should not be a problem. So I'm going to go ahead, play the app, and I'm going to just pick a date, contract date, 26th of July, and all these are TNM. And I'm going to post this to SharePoint. Now, if I head back to flow, and if I go back to my flows and it's my contracts management flow, you can see my flow is running and it's already completed. But let's look at these two attributes that were passed. Here's the contract date that got passed from my PowerApps to flow, and here's the contract type. And of course, it's gone ahead and again created those files, and at the same time, after creating it, it has also gone ahead and updated those metadata properties. So if you look at SharePoint now, if you look at my document repository, all my files have been uploaded and they have been tagged with the contract date and the correct contract type. All of this information coming from my PowerApps into SharePoint. Thank you for watching.